it's Jeff Phillips here from Western Combatives, the host and drill creator from the Ultimate Self-Defense Championship. And what I'm going to do here is give you a web series with a little bit of insight into the method behind the madness. That is the how and why of all the drills that we do, a personal review and critique of competitors and how they went without being an armchair critic. The bus bash. So the inspiration behind the bus bash was, as a kid, you would commonly see fights on buses, kids getting bullied on buses. I'd been in a few altercations on buses and trains. Growing up here in Western Sydney, you would see quite a lot of altercations on trains, particularly anyone who's ever travelled on the quiet carriage and expected, quiet and seen the way people act. I can guarantee you they've all felt like throwing hands at some point. Every women's course we do, most of the women come in, all have a story of something bad that's happened to them on a train. So this was designed to test the ability, or the physical ability, to be able to defend yourself on a bus, train, plane, etc. whilst it's in motion. And we're lucky enough to have a driver who would drive erratically so that it'll make that challenging environment even more challenging. All right, I know what you're thinking. I know you're thinking that if something like this arose on a bus or on a train, all you do is go and move seats, go and sit in the guard carriage or go and sit near the bus driver. I get that. You could de-escalate. There's many other things you could do, be situationally aware, get up and move. If there's dodgy looking characters in the train, 100%. But you know what? You're not going to tune in and watch if someone just gets up and moves to the seat. Come on. And let's be honest too, as I said earlier, lots of incidents occur on buses and trains and such. So it's part of self-defense. So what I'm going to do is a little rundown of areas where we think people could have improved. There were a couple of MMA and martial arts training scars that appeared where they were abiding by the rules, like MMA rules, as opposed to having the freedom of self-defense and being able to do more or less anything. So with me today, I have our instructor, Aaron, one of our Western Combatives instructors, and we're here in our little bus room. This is all bus/train room, which is what this was designed for these particular scenarios. So from the beginning, the first thing that we noticed that could have been improved somewhat was the aggression. And I know that's kind of tough because they're all friends, and also maybe there wasn't enough clarity in how intense they could have gone. So they were a little bit too nice to one another. So the first thing that indicated that was, number one, the creating of distances. You would see that once the timer started and it was game on, everyone would jump up and they'd separate and they'd get into this sort of kickboxing duel, as opposed to what should have happened is when the timer went, they should have just jumped on and started swinging. So that was one area where we saw it. There was a lot of distance and separation. There was one that we saw with Matt, who is normally the most aggressive guy going. He was sitting like behind Mike. And when the timer went, he just started doing like some jabs, almost like saying to Mike, hey, I'm over here, let's start. Whereas normal Matt would have from there just started swinging, he would have just went, hammer and tong straight away. So that aggression, probably, that's one thing that we could pick. Next thing is up kicks. So up kicks, there was plenty of opportunity to do up kicks. People decided to play nice, I guess, and play by, BJJ rules, where up kicks were used to create space, or they were pushing on people's arms, as opposed to when they were in these positions, those up kicks could have been coming straight to their face, and they can be very damaging. The amount of power that you can get from them, I think, that was one area that they could have improved upon and could have really set them apart from the opposition. Other things that appeared were head and neck manipulations. So you would see people clinching and they're basically in here playing by the MMA rules. But what they should have done is, got those frames going where from there, you could turn, and I've broken down his structure and I could hit and get that advantage. If this was real self-defense and they didn't have helmets, they could get into the eye gouges and things, which we know is not necessarily a fight stopper, but it caused a reaction for us to do something else. So that eye gouge might make them move their head away, that I could then unload on them. So there were little things like that that didn't appear either. Maybe once or twice, but not a great deal. The next thing that I saw was target acquisition, or choice of targets. So there wasn't many groin shots, and I know what you're thinking, Krav Maga, it's all about groin shots. But there was one instance where someone had someone's leg, and they had them up and basically they were trying to go a takedown. They could have just been unloading on their groin. Again, just like eye gouges, we don't claim that that's a fight stopper, but it's part of a combination. So it would have inflicted damage, and let's be honest, it does hurt. So things like that, there are opportunities where people could have hit in the back of the head. Like when we do it in training, we do it softly just to let them know, hey, I can hit you there. I think Jeff did it once in it and did quite well. Other little things is, I guess, headbutts and choices of tools. Like, by that I mean, there were opportunities for people to headbutt. It was taken once or twice, but not as often as they possibly could have. That was another big one. As well as that, using the environment, so grabbing people's heads and ramming it into walls and things like that. Again, I know we're probably being cautious about destroying the bus and additional cost to it, but you know, that's an option there as well. And there's a big thing as well. People will say, you know, particularly BJJ people will go, oh, well, if you gouge my eyes, or if you bite me, or if you do this, you know, I can do that too. But just like striking, if someone hits you first, they have a massive advantage. So if I get that eye gouge on, you know, straight away, then it's basically turned the fight in my favor. So if you don't train it, you don't necessarily see it. Okay, that's one of the biggest things where, you know, in MMA people hold each other against the cage where you could drop that knee into the groin. Again, not saying it's a fight stopper, but it does hurt like a hit to the head. So that could make them react in a different way and open up different opportunities for you. So they're the other little bits and pieces, I guess, that we tweak our dirty MMA to be more self-defense orientated. That could come out. Alright, so ground fighting on a bus is a totally different animal. So we're in this confined space, you cannot move a great deal. But what I like to see instead, like I saw an instance where one of the competitors basically had their underhooks and was holding the person there, which was good in some sense because it didn't allow this person to be able to access weapons in their pockets or whatever, but it didn't allow them to inflict much damage, aside from headbutting, which I think it took them a while, that then they started to headbutt, but it took a little bit of time for them that to happen. Instead, like I would encourage, and this is one instance where, you know, you bring your hands up and you can even, you know, I know in general BJJ and wrestling, you wouldn't straighten your arm, put in that position, there's a big chance you'd get armbarred. But on that bus where the seats were facing that way and you're that cramped, there's no room to move your hips. It's like your hips are locked in tight. So the threat of being reversed, armbar, triangle, whatever, is not present here. So what I would encourage, instead of, you know, getting those underhooks, is to stay on top and start to work from here, posture up from there, you know, and start to strike. Try and get to your feet if you can and start to drop kicks in and things like that. You know, headbutt, use those things. This is one area where eye gouging is great. Like if all I've got is this, you know, from there, I can start to rip his hair, gouge his eyes. Can't do that in the competition because of the helmets, but, you know, there's some options for self-defense. Same with the person on the bottom. In that position where they were covered, you know, they could easily start to go to work and eye gouge and, you know, even start to hit my head into the environment and things like that. They've got no other choice. They're not going to be able to reverse this, so they have to fight from the bottom. And that belief that you cannot fight from the bottom or inflict much damage from the bottom is not true. There's plenty of videos out there of people on the bottom KOing people on the top. Again, what he should have tried to do is create a bit of distance. If you could get that left knee to start to create that distance, get to his feet or use those up kicks again. Plenty of options there.